This is part 2 in making a simple video game with Buildbox video series. We're going to start by adding the game over event observer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in a game over event observer as well, so that once the character is defeated, the game over is going to be triggered. So we've got the event observer here, but we need to add the game over event observer to the game's UI, the user interface as well, to make this work. So I'm going to go into my mind map. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a new UI. And I'm going to just set this right here. I'll probably rename it 3D World UI. And then I'm going to hook up the 3D World to this UI. So I'm going to double click on my 3D World UI and go inside my 3D World, and I'm going to add in a logic piece, and I'm going to add in that event observer. And then this time I'm going to keep it as a game over event observer. And then I'm going to just rename it game over. Perfect. Now I'm going to go back to my mind map, and you can see here that since we added the game over event observer, we've actually added another output to this user interface. So let's go ahead and let's right click real fast, and I'm going to add in another UI. This is going to be the game over UI. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this real fast, game over UI. Perfect. Okay, awesome. And then we can go ahead and see that our game is going to end as soon as we run into the spike. You can see that the character is defeated, and then that is game over. So let's go ahead and exit out of preview real fast. I'm going to hit Command S on my keyboard and just save my game again real fast. And then let's go ahead and work on the next step. So I have some artwork here that I have off to the side, and I'm going to drag it into my game over UI. So first, I have this little white background that I'm going to use, and I'm going to just stretch this out, and I'm going to do a quick animation with this in a little bit. Let's go ahead and actually do that right now. So I'm going to go to the open event of the animation. I'm going to change the frames to only 20 frames real fast, and then I'm going to hit the record button, and I'm going to move my little marker over to the 20th frame, go to the opacity setting, and hit enter on my keyboard. What this does is it creates a little animation marker, and then now you know that at this point, at this frame, there is an animation taking place. At least there's a marker taking place and something's going on. So that's a way to kind of know and see what's happening in this animation timeline. So let's go over to the 0 frame and let's change the opacity to 0 and hit enter. And then now you can see that as you move from the 0 frame to the 20th frame, it's actually going to fade in really, really nicely. And so at the 0 frame, it's set to 0. At the 20th frame, it's set to 1. And then in between 0 and 20, it rises up to 1. So you can go ahead, I'm going to turn the record button off, and I'm going to press play, and you can see the opacity slowly goes up to 1, and then you can see the animation repeats over and over again. So we've got that figured out, but let's also create a button so that we can restart our game once we enter the game over UI. So I'm going to take this little play button copy, and I'm going to drop it in as a navigation button. Really, really easy. And I'm going to change the function to restart. Perfect. So really, really simple. I'll rename it restart button. And then I want to do a similar animation so that it fades in really nicely. I'm going to first move it up in the layer hierarchy over here, so it's up above that white image. Otherwise, if we moved it down below it and we got to the last frame, it would cover up the button. So what we're going to do is we're going to just move it up above it. Okay, we'll do the same animation as we did before. Go to the 20th frame, hit enter on 1, go to the 0 frame, go 0, and hit enter. And then we've got a nice fade in, and then we can restart our game. So let's go ahead and test that. So I'll press play, and you can see the character is defeated, and then you can press play again and start your game over again. Okay, cool. So we've got that working. Now let's go ahead and find a way so that we can make the character jump over these spikes. So I'm going to go to my mind map, go to my 3D world, and I'm going to go into my actor's node map by double clicking, and then let's add in some controls. So I'm going to go to the Controls tab, I'm going to drag out a touch node, I'm going to hook it up so that if you touch the screen, let's go ahead and add some movement and make it jump. So I'm actually going to move this down here for display purposes. I'm going to add in something down here, and you'll see in a little bit it's going to look a little nicer. So when we touch the screen, we are going to make the character jump. Let's go ahead and give it a jump of about, I would say about 10 actually. 20 is going to be a little bit too high. And let's also do a jump limit of 2. If we don't do a jump limit, you can just keep jumping over and over and over again. It'll just go flying off into space. So let's do a jump limit of 2. And real quick, let's take a look at what we've got. So the 10 is okay. It's a little bit high, but I also want to raise the gravity a little bit too so that you're coming down faster. So 10 might work. So let's go ahead and exit out of the preview. Let's hit Command S or Control S on your keyboard if you're using a PC. Save your game again. And then let's go to our 3D world and back to our mind map. Select our 3D world in our mind map, and then over here is the gravity setting, and right now it's set to negative 9.8 meters per second, which is going to be the exact gravity that it is on Earth. And so what we want to do is raise the gravity up. So let's just do 20. Let's press play. Let's see what the jump is looking like. Okay, that works. Cool. Okay, great. So you'll notice that I was able to jump twice, but then I wasn't able to jump anymore. So that's because we haven't reset the jump. The character reached the jump limit, but then it wasn't reset. So we're going to go into our 3D world, go into our actors node map, and let's make it so that if we collide, and I'll go into my actions menu here, I'll drag out an if collide node, and if we collide, and I'll change the affected asset to platform. So if we collide with a platform, let's go ahead and reset the jump. Perfect. And so we already set the ground to a platform earlier in this video, so we should be able to jump again and again and again, and it's not going to reach the limit and just stop like it did before. Okay, great. One thing I want you to notice, I'm going to press play and I want you to look at the debug mode. I'll refresh it real fast. You can see it's a little hard to see because I have a green ground, but there's this little green outliner here, and that is the collision shape of the cone. So we actually need to update the collision shape of the cone, and we'll do that here in our first scene. So I'll zoom in so you can see it really easily. Right now, if you turn on collision shape mode over here, you'll notice that there's a cube going on, and that is actually the collision shape of this cone, and that's not what we want. So let's select our cone, change the collision shape over here to a hull, and then edit, and then click the little edit button, and we will add in a cone OBJ, and that is going to be our new collision shape. Now, it's kind of hard to see. It's like it almost looks like the collision shape disappeared, but that's just because it's so perfectly in line with the actual shape. So let me go ahead and turn on the scale tool here, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger so you can see that yellow collision shape really nicely. So that's actually the collision shape that you're looking at. So if we turn off collision shape mode and we press play and we look at the debug mode again, you can see the little green cone there, and it's a little bit more accurate. And that's what we want. We want it to be exactly the same as the shape of the object. In other cases, you might not want it to be, but in this one, we want it to be the shape of the spike. So one thing to notice is that the character actually ran into the spike, but it wasn't defeated. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that? Why is that happening? So the reason why that's happening is because of the collision shape on the actor. And it's a really, really easy fix. So I'm going to turn on collision shape mode again, and then you can see here that the actor actually has 3 different collision shapes working. There's the start collision shape that it starts off with, and then there's the collision shape for when it runs into enemies, and then there's the collision shape for when it runs into platforms. So all we need to do is we need to select the collision shape when it is affected by the enemy, and we're going to just make it a little tiny bit bigger. Not very much, but it's going to make it a lot easier for it to pick up whether or not it's running into an enemy or a platform. And it's still going to work it's going to still work perfectly when it runs into platforms as well. It's just this is going to make it work very nicely. So I'll turn off collision shape mode again. Be careful. If you're stuck in collision shape mode and you move things around, it's going to mess with the collision shape, and that can make things really wonky. So let's go ahead and press play. And we can see now that we're going to run into our spike, no problem, and it's going to defeat the character, and it's going to work perfectly every time. So now we've got a character, we've got some enemies. Let's add in some coins and a score so we can keep track of our points. So let's go to our asset library, go to the Smart Assets tab, and double click on a coin, and we're going to use the coin for our point system in this game. So I'll go to my first scene. I will drag out a coin into my scene, and I'll lift it just above the spike. Perfect. So probably somewhere like that, probably that height is going to be good enough. And then now we need to add in a score label so we can keep track of our points. So we want to go to our mind map, go to our 3D world UI, and add in a label. So I'm going to just add in the default font label. I'm going to place it up here in the left hand corner, and I'm going to change the function of this label to score type. I'm going to change the world to current world. I'll keep the points score type for now, and I'll change the amount to current, and I like alignment center for this. Okay, great. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Command S on my keyboard and just save real fast again. And then let's press play, and let's make sure that that is working. So I'm collecting the coins, and I've got my score label a little bit high so you can't see it. But one thing that's really cool is you can, I'm going to turn off debug mode too because it's unnecessary. But you can refresh this and then move the score label real time. You see how I was able to reposition it and see how it's going to look. So I can just move it around and it's perfect. So I'm going to place it somewhere like right about here. Let's go ahead and check that. Yeah, that works for me. Okay, cool. So I'll exit out of the preview real fast. I'm going to go to my mind map. I'm going to go to my 3D world, and I just want to show you real quickly a couple different options you have. Right now we've got our complete working game. We've got a character jumping over enemies and it's collecting points. So I want to show you a couple different options to add some variety to this game. So real quick, you can turn on this little camera here, and this will actually show you what your game is going to look like in your preview window. And any movements that you make in this scene are going to show up in your preview window as well. So let's say I wanted to make a game a little bit more isometric, let's say. So something like this and kind of do an angle. So I'll press play, and you can see now that we've got this character going down the path, and it kind of gives it a very different feel. So experiment with different camera angles, different camera views, and all of it is super easy in Buildbox. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a real quick one on how to build a simple game from scratch, and keep an eye out for more videos to come, and as always, keep on boxing.